This is the Voice of Wichita Falls.
And the Voice of Wichita Falls is back for another week. Yes, we have survived. And Henry Florsham is here in the studio with me. I'm Mike Hendren. Henry, I see you've survived the vote.
Scarred and wounded a little bit, but I survived.
It was a rough couple of months for you in the Chamber of Commerce.
I'll tell you what, it was the most interesting time in my life, really. Somehow, I became the most loved but most hated person in the city at the same time.
Well,
so it was tough. There was a whole lot of negativity and attacks and name calling, but we got so much support for what we're trying to do for the city as well, and I will never forget that.
Right.
And so now we got to figure out, okay, what do we do next to grow this city?
Yeah, and there's a lot of work to be done. And this past week we had Wichita Falls Mayor Steven Santillana on my morning show, Wake Up Call. And we spent 2 hours talking about all of this stuff. You and I've got 30 minutes here to hash out where do we go from here? Okay, we have one bond out of 7 pass, and it just barely passed. And that was some street improvements, which are great, very important, very much needed. But still, that was just one component of it. All of the other stuff is stuff that at some point down the road, we're going to have to do this stuff.
We are. So, and the thing to remember is that these propositions were just a small part of what we're trying to accomplish in this city. Right. We just rolled out our new plan to grow the city that we talked about before, and some of the propositions would have helped us get there faster. Yep. But our new strategy is our new strategy regardless of what happened on May 5th. And so we're finalizing the implementation plan for that strategy right now. And this summer, we're going to get moving on a lot of really big, impactful action items.
Well, so let's start with the obvious. The bond issues that did not pass, we still need to do those things. And as you said, more. So the next step from here is the city council has got to start looking at budgets. Is there anywhere to cut? Because from what I can tell, Henry, this city operates pretty lean.
I don't believe there is, and I've been to enough council meetings and other meetings to know that this city operates pretty tightly, pretty lean. And if they had more money to spend, they would have been spending it already on things like roads and downtown and finishing the trail. Because if we don't, the trail is a great example. If we don't find the money to finish the trail, only having to pay 20% of it because of the state grants that'll cover 80%, then we're going to be on the hook for all of it. So if the city had extra money to put towards projects, they'd do that because it would save us money. That would be the fiscally responsible thing to do. And so if there's not money readily available, the city's going to have to come up with whatever options are still available to them to make the really important financial decisions that they need to make.
Yeah, and budget cuts there's probably not a lot to cut. The next thing you look at is a tax increase, which we haven't had in a couple of years. But we're looking at a very real possibility. There's going to be a tax increase.
Yeah, it's just a challenge. And I would not want the mayor's job or the city manager's job. It's a very tough thing to do when you've got a big portion of your citizenry saying we don't want new taxes, new projects. You know, a lot of the no vote was focused on killing everything. Some of it obviously wasn't. There were plenty of issues with the propositions and with some of the individual projects, but the message that was sent is it's a mixed message. And so the city's got to figure out what should our next priority be and how in the world are we going to pay for that so we can start trying to move the city forward.
There's a lot of things that over the last several days that I've heard from people and during the course of the election cycle, one of the big ones that came up was, well, why are we spending $131 million on this when we should be building Lake Ringgold? That Lake Ringgold project has been on the table for years. I think the mayor said last week we put $1 million a year back each year toward that project. But it's a $300 million plus project. Some estimates put it closer to $500 million. It's a years-long project. It's not something that can be done in 5 or 10 or even 15 years. I think the mayor said if we had every dime of the money we need right now, we'd still be looking at about 18 years, maybe 20, to get there. It's a lengthy, difficult process to build a reservoir.
Plus, with as much outroar as there was about new taxes, the citizens of the city are not going to pass a bond for $300 or $400 million. They're not.
No.
There was so much upset about a potential 23% increase if everything had passed. They're just not going to do it. water's an issue, but I just guarantee you the citizens would not vote for that right now. And
well, but wouldn't you agree our water situation right now is as close to excellent as it can
get?
get?
The lakes are at 90% right now.
Right.
And that's not just Mother Nature. Part of that's because the recycling program that we've implemented where we're pumping water back into our reservoirs. And so the city, and this is what gets me, and the city gets beat up so much, nobody ever talks about the good things that they do. And what they did for water for us over this last drought was pretty special. And so the reason our lakes are where they are is because we're able to put so much water back into it right now. And so even if the same drought that hit us last time hits us again, we're not getting down to 19%. It's not happening.
No.
So the city's done a lot of good work. They still need to be looking at long-term options for us, but we're in pretty good shape right now.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't build Lake Ringgold. I'm not saying don't keep that on the table. What I'm saying is if you think that's a short-term project, forget about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not. That is a decades-long project just to get it done. So I'm not going to live to see the benefits of Lake Ringgold. You probably won't live to see the benefits of Lake Ringgold. You know, that's 40, 50 years down the road potentially. Our kids and our grandkids might, but we're not going to. So I'm not saying don't do it. But it's not a project that's going to help us in the short term because it can't be done short term. It is a years long process. And I've heard a lot from people about, well, they should have done this 20, 30 years ago. They should have thought about this back then. Why didn't they fix the foundation issues at Memorial 30, 40 years ago? Believe me, they wanted to. But there were councils and council members and mayors who said, I don't think there's any way people are going to give us $20 million to fix this. It's not going to happen, or $30 million, or whatever the price tag would have been at that time. That just wasn't going to happen.
And even if they should have done these things 20 or 30 or 50 years ago, that discussion doesn't help today.
No, it doesn't.
The council cannot sit here and worry about what some other council and city leadership did in the 1950s.
Or didn't do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They can't. They have a decision to make right now based upon the current scenario.
Right.
And to talk about what should have been done and to use that as an excuse to not move forward, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, you got to look at, okay, what's going to benefit us tomorrow and 5 years and 10 years and 20 years down the road.
Right.
That's what you got to look at. And we do operate very lean. So you talked about the Chamber's plan, and you covered a lot of this stuff during the Falls Future Forum that you had a few weeks ago.
Sure.
Kind of walk us through now what your next step is. We've gotten past this election. We know the city council knows, the mayor knows where the next steps need to go for that. Where does the chamber go next?
Sure, and let me just clarify this too. This is not the chamber's plan. This is a plan that a large community group put together. We assembled a committee of about 35 people that represented every key sector of this city, and so a lot of our larger employers were represented: manufacturing, healthcare, small business, government, education, technology, nonprofits, the arts, downtown, military. And so this committee covered a wide cross-section of our community, and all of those organizations will be working to help push this plan forward. And so we finalized the plan in March. Now we're finalizing the implementation plan. Who does what? How are we measuring success and that sort of thing? And so we've got 7 areas that we're going to focus on, and if we can make some things happen in these 7 areas, we're going to grow this city. Regardless of what happened on May 5th, we've got this plan in place, and we're going to grow this city, focusing more attention on things like taking advantage of Shepherd Air Force Base being here and the workforce that comes out of there, and refining our economic development efforts, and modern school facilities, and developing better pipelines for students from all levels to get into the workforce. And so we've got a lot of stuff going on, and that plan is still posted at fallsfuture.com if somebody wants to go check it out. This month, we'll finalize that implementation plan, and over the next couple of months, we'll start assembling action teams that are going to handle each one of them. And they'll start getting together and figuring out, okay, what are some early wins we can accomplish, the action items that won't take so long, that'll be very visible, and then how do we structure each entity to where we can make some things happen in the long run. Yeah, and that website, fallsfuture.com, that's going to remain there permanently. You're going to continue to update that. It is. We'll use that website. We'll use fallsfuture.com as a way to update the community on our plans and what's happening. And the intent all along was to keep people updated on the progress of any of the propositions that passed. And so we'll use that to keep people up to date on the street projects that are part of Prop C that did pass. And then anything new that comes along that we're planning, we'll use that to let people know. It's a good brand, and it's a real simple website to navigate, and so it'll be a good place for people to go and check it out. And
we're probably looking at a 2-year time frame for the projects associated with Prop C to get done.
That's what I'm thinking. A lot of the engineering's been done already because that's the funny thing. These projects were going to happen at some point once they rose up to the top of the priority list for the city.
Sure.
So a lot of that work's been done already. And so that I would expect, I had talking to Darren Liker all along. Darren, what happens Monday after the election? And he said, whatever passes, we're going to start working on it on Monday. And so I'm sure they're working on it right now to make these things happen.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, that Maplewood extension over to McNeil, there's what was it, like $1 million commitment from the apartment complex
Right. They
owners
pledged $1 million, and what they were going to do was going to be a 2-lane connection. And the city knew that if that connection was made, it was going to become very, very busy on that road. And so it made way more sense to go ahead and do it a 4-lane. Every other road in that area is a 4-lane road because that's, between McNeil right there and the mall, that's the highest trafficked area in the city. And so it needs to be a nice 4-lane road that's going to last. And so that's why the developer's money alone was not enough to really build what the city needed to build.
Oh, there are times during the week and on Saturdays that you will not get me anywhere near Caulfield Road and Lawrence Road.
Yeah. And it's certainly not Dallas traffic, but I don't know anybody that likes to drive on Lawrence Road. And so that, of all the projects, I wouldn't have picked streets as my one to pass to really move the city forward, but I'm happy about the Maplewood extension for sure. That's going to change traffic patterns in the city.
And we do have a lot of other street projects that they've got to look at too.
We do.
Repairs and upgrades.
They're going to be able to fund about 6 years worth of street projects all at once because of Prop C passing.
Yeah, I think he said, the mayor said we had about 500 miles of streets in the city, and everything needs some kind of attention at some point.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter, you have to prioritize.
Right.
Which wheel gets greased today?
And the money they're able to budget each year, about $2.5 million for streets, of those 500 miles, it can do less than 10.
Yeah.
So they needed more resources, and the voters said yes on that.
Definitely. We've talked a lot about the employment situation here. The unemployment rate here is very low. We need a bigger workforce, and we've got all these companies around town. How many positions do we have that are open right now that they're trying to hire for?
It changes from day to day, but just over the last couple of months, there are more than a couple hundred from our top employers, and these are good paying jobs with benefits that these companies need filling. You're talking about industrial, education, healthcare, and some others, and the election didn't change that. And so that's the conversation we're still having, is we've still got to address these issues that create that help us create our bigger talent pool. And that's one of the key pieces in our strategy, is focusing on developing more of our own citizens into the workers that our companies need. And then that whole idea of being a city where more people are willing to stay.
Absolutely.
People are willing to move to. That hasn't changed just because the election results weren't what we wanted. Those issues still exist, and we've got to address them.
Well, things are going very strongly at Shepherd Air Force Base right now. That mission is strong. Midwestern State University wants to grow. I think they want to add like 6,000 students over a period of time. That's great. And, we've got jobs here that we need to fill. We've lost, I personally, on my radio station, lost an advertiser last month who left Wichita Falls. And part of the reason they left here, one of the main reasons they left here, was not being able to find the help that they needed and people that would stay with them. And they were importing help from one of their other stores in Amarillo to come here to work because they couldn't fill a position. They just couldn't find anybody. And we talked about this last week with the mayor, is how even here at our radio station, 15 years ago, you'd have 4 or 5 people a day come in looking for a job, wanting to drop off a resume, either to be a salesman or try to even get an on-air position. You don't see 5 a month. Sometimes you don't see 1 a month.
Right.
Now. They're just not around. And you go to so many restaurants and other businesses in town that have help wanted signs up. And I may be wrong about this, and you tell me if I am, or maybe you don't really know. I don't know. I'm hoping you do. But I don't think there's a restaurant in this city that's starting anybody out at $7.25 an hour, because they know they ain't going to keep them if they
I haven't researched the restaurant wages, but it happens everywhere. When the labor pool gets tight, wages go up. So that is a good thing for us. But if we expect to grow, we've got to figure out how to provide more workforce. And the thing is, this is happening everywhere. This is not
Sure.
unique to Wichita Falls.
Right.
And the cities that are going to win, in economic development are the ones that figure out how to grow the talent pool. And
Right.
so it's all about how do we become competitive. You know, it's funny, this whole process, the chamber and our mission has become much more visible during this campaign. And after the election, I wrote an op-ed in the paper talking about these issues, about how they still exist, and we've got to figure out what to do because the cities we're competing with are doing these things. And I made a statewide political blog. A guy was criticizing me, saying, "I can't believe the head of the chamber is talking about how his city's not great." And you know,
Yes.
him wanting to compete with other cities, that's just pure envy and jealousy.
Yes.
I'm like, no, it's not. Those other cities aren't doing it for jealousy either. And it's not about keeping up with the Joneses. It's about providing our citizens with a quality city. And yeah, there are some great things about this city that I love. But until we address some of these issues, you know, until we address the fact that we've got a 100+ year school falling down around us and it's been doing that for 50 years, you can't say we're a great city. And so we need to work on those issues to get us there. And we can do that. And that's our mission, is to make it better. And so the whole idea that we just move on and focus on other things now doesn't make any sense. We've got to deal with this workforce issue.
Part of the plan you're talking about, schools is a big part of that. And we've talked in past shows about how, yes, we need to build new schools here. There's this constant back and forth in the community about, well, do we need one great big school? Do we really need 3 high schools? Could we do it with 2 and not 3? I personally am of the opinion you need the 3 high schools. Wichita Falls is very spread out. But not only that, if the population is going to grow, I think if you built one super high school, as some people have called it, you've immediately limited yourself in terms of capacity. You want people to have those other options. We got to have public schools. There's no question about that. Not everybody can be homeschooled or private schooled. We got to have public schools. In fact, we're legally obligated to educate our kids. So we got to have these public schools. And I'm a 3-school proponent. You know, we keep Hershey. We do updates to it. We replace Wichita Falls High School with a brand new building. We replace Ryder High School with a brand new building and repurpose Ryder maybe as another junior high. You know, I mean, whatever the plan works out to be, I think it's got to be a 3-school model. What say you?
For starters, I don't care as long as we address the issues, but I feel bad for people like you that went to Hershey. Right? Didn't you go to Hershey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I hear a lot of talk about, do we need 1 or 2 high schools? And all they're talking about is Ryder and Old High, and forgetting about Hershey.
I know.
And that doesn't make any sense. The fact of the matter is, quality school facilities help attract people to a city and help keep people there.
Sure.
They do. And so it's just another one of those things that we have to address one way or another. There was so much outrage about the idea of consolidating Old High and Ryder back in 2014 when that election failed.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if enough people have changed their mind on that to allow it to pass. And so if they haven't, then we've just got to figure out, what do the citizens want and what will pass. It's not just about what they want, it's what will get voted in.
If the people that I have talked to, the Ryder and Wichita Falls High School people that I have talked to, are representative of those 2 groups as a whole, the answer is flat out no. We've not changed our minds. We don't want to be combined. We want our own facilities. Okay, well, but that's going to come at a price. I mean, there is a price tag attached to that. And I've heard numbers anywhere from 180 or 90 million all the way up to $250 million. It just depends on how big you go and the amenities that are included into it. There's some things that you absolutely must do, some things that maybe you could live without, that you could do, 80% now and the other 20% later. I mean, there's a variety of ways they could break this up and make this work over time. But bottom line, they want their own facilities, and people just need to understand that's going to require a bond issue. The price tag is not going to be a cheap one. And if you want it done, you got to pass it. You got to push forward with that.
Yeah, because I can tell you this. Okay, so yeah, we had a rough election in 2014, and the school consolidation got voted down.
Right.
In 2015, we passed the CEC Center, which is spectacular. It's going to do amazing things for us. Now we had this election, which was pretty ugly and built some pretty big divisions in the city. If the school district comes back with a a proposition I don't know, next year maybe, for some new schools, whatever the plan looks like. I'm telling you what, if we don't pass something at that point, there are going to be people moving out of the city, because the whole idea that we don't spend anything, we don't care, and everything's just we're happy the way it is, that's not a place where people want to be. And I'm not saying everybody said that, because they didn't. But at some point, we've got to invest in ourselves. And so we've got to work with the school district over this next year or two or whatever to really help them understand what do the citizens want and what will pass, because it's really important. May 5th was a pretty important day, but if on the heels of this, we can't get schools done at some point in the near future,
right,
we're in serious trouble as a city.
Well, a lot of these vote no people claim they voted no because they think we need to do schools first. Well, that's fine. If that's really where your conscience and your heart led you, that's great. That's fine. Now, when the school bond issue comes up, don't say no to it.
Right. We'll see. I heard that a lot too. There was a hashtag streets first. Schools first that was going around.
Yes.
But I also talked to a lot of the vote no people that voted no on everything because they don't want a penny of new taxes, period.
Yeah.
And so just like all of our other elections, the question's going to be determined by who gets the vote out the most.
Right.
And we've got to figure out how to do that, because if we just say we're never spending another extra dime in taxes, this city will eventually die.
One of the criticisms that I had of the bond election is I felt like we did not invest sufficient time as a city in educating people about it and promoting it. And I know you and your staff at the chamber, you guys worked tirelessly with the time that you had to promote it. But I really felt like we should have spent a year selling this bond issue, going to people and saying, look, here's why we want to do this. Here's why this is important. And I was at the point where I'm like, guys, I'll volunteer to go door to door and knock on doors and talk to people if that's what we need to do. But let's spend some more time doing this. But in the end, it didn't work out that way.
I agree with you completely.
And I think that's part of it, is a lack of understanding of some of these issues and why they were important.
Right. One of the reasons we didn't knock doors, that was one of the strengths of the vote no group, and they did a great job getting out in neighborhoods and knocking doors and talking to people. We couldn't, because besides me, it would have been impossible to train a large group of volunteers to understand all 7 propositions and all the projects within each one and all the issues and why each one was important. There's no way you could have trained a volunteer base to get out and knock doors.
Yeah.
So whatever the city does when they come back at some point with a new proposal, it's got to be as simple as it can possibly be, or we're going to get the same results again.
Yeah. One of the things I want to cover with you real quick, if we can, is there was a lot of criticism about not having a disclaimer on mailings from the chamber that promoting the bond, the political ad paid for by. And we've covered this before, but if we can touch on it one more time, why wasn't that on there?
We followed all the counsel that we received, and we sought it, and so did the other organizations in this town, that a PAC is different from a 501c6. And we are legally allowed to advocate, and the yard signs had the legal language on it that the yard sign code reads different from all the other advertising codes.
Right.
And the yard sign code, the way it reads is no matter who you are, that you got to do this.
Right.
And the others, they don't say that. And so we read through them 100 times. Everything pointed back to the chamber. It's a matter of the wording, right? But we funded everything ourselves, and we've been telling people that from the start, and it just became an issue out of a non-issue.
Right.
So people know us. We're a local group funded by the local business community, and we did what we were asked to do. Yeah.
There was no issue there, but somebody made it an issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Where no issue really existed. Well, going forward, if you had to pick one particular item out of the list that you're going to be working on right now, today, moving forward, is there one in particular that sticks out that you've got to start working on right now, immediately?
The one that makes the most financial sense to work on immediately is finishing the trail. We've got grants that'll pay for 80% of it.
Yeah.
And if we can find a way to fund the 20%, it's not a huge dollar figure.
Right.
If we can do that, especially if we can also build the spurs, the connectors to MSU and Shepherd.
Right.
There would be a really big impact for a small dollar figure.
Right.
I'm still very interested in the downtown streetscapes, but we're not going to be able to fund that right now. And so we're going to keep pushing forward on our downtown projects. And there's so much happening down there anyway. But I think the one that makes the most sense to get done quickly is the trail. And
to be clear, the 80%, the grant part of it, doesn't happen unless we come up with the other money. Is that correct?
The clock is ticking. And this is the way every grant works. They're not going to give you 10 years to come up with your share of the money. Right. And I don't know what the deadline is, but if we don't do it in the near future, the grant goes away, and then we're going to finish the trail much farther down the road, and the taxpayers are going to have to pay 100% of it, and the cost will probably go up just because of inflation.
We'll have to do what we've been doing. We'll just nickel and dime it.
Exactly. Since 1984. It's time to get the thing finished. People love it. I heard, this was just another one of those deflections. I heard from a lot of people that said, nobody uses the trail. Nobody anywhere uses the trail. I gave about 50 presentations, and every one of them I asked how many of you use the trail, and every single one of them, over half the audience used it at some point or another. And so it's one of those things. 100% of our citizens may not, but for no other reasons than money reasons, we need to do it now.
Yeah, I don't use it, but I see why it's important. I see why some people would find that to be an important feature to have.
Yeah, you need options.
I get that. So even though I personally am not using it, because I haven't ridden a bike in years, okay, and I spend 80% of my time is spent working. I'm a busy guy, so I just don't. It's not that I can't use it; I just don't make the time to. But I can see why other people find it very important and find it as a part of a quality of life issue. I totally get it.
And I think we're only talking about $8 or $10 million to finish the entire trail and those two connectors.
Right. And
think about that. All that rest of that would come from the state.
Yeah. As these projects go, the price tag is pretty low.
Yeah, it is.
It is. Henry, if people want to get in touch with the chamber, want to get in touch with you, want to ask more questions, if they want to have a one-on-one conversation with you, how do they reach you?
Call us anytime, 723-2741, and my email is henry@wichitafallschamber.com.
We got a lot more to talk about with this program going forward. I think we do have a really good city. I think we can be a really great city. I'm with you on that. Being a lifelong resident, there's a lot of things I want to see happen here. Part of the reason I stayed here is because I love living here.
Yeah.
And I want to see good things happen to it. And I think we can. I think we're turning a corner more and more every day, and we're getting closer. It's just, now we got to work a little harder. So anyway, guys, thanks for being here with us for the Voice of Wichita Falls. We're back with you next week. Have a great rest of your weekend, and all next week. We'll see you next weekend right here with more Voice of Wichita Falls. God bless you, and adios.